Welcome to Season 3 of the Amani Experience podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is the award-winning Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, author, and undercover gamer. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who have gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to the Amani Experience podcast.
Welcome to episode 134 of the Amani Experience podcast. For this show, it will be a solo episode with me talking to you about the 7 books you should read. I will detail the 7 books, give you some clips and some thoughts. For this show, we are sponsored by my new book coming out, which is called DJs Mean Business. If you text the words DJ Amro, all one word, to 33777, you get put on a list where you get some special perks when the book is released. You can order the book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble's. Pre-order is available now, and the book will ship out on April 14th. If you want to reach me, you can email me, podcast@amaniexperience.com. Follow me on all the socials at Amani Experience, and feel free to donate to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Amani Experience. Let's get to our first book of the list. It is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I love this book. I think that anyone should really do the activities. 12 weeks, read a chapter a week, do all the activities at the end of the chapter, and after 12 weeks, you'll be amazed at the progress and growth you've had. I'm going to share a clip from Julia Cameron, the author herself, as she explains kind of how morning pages came to be, which is one of the key takeaways from the book. Take a listen to this, and this is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron.
And then it came to me that what had happened to me was writing, allowing the higher power to write through me, writing 3 pages in the morning, going for walks. I actually thought, oh my God, I have a toolkit. I can teach them my toolkit. So the first class was about 20 people, maybe a few fewer than that. And I would get up and say, now what I want you to do is I want you to write pages in the morning and then take a walk. And what happened is they started unblocking. And I thought, oh, these tools are powerful. And I began to write essays that said what I thought, like, try to let the higher power write through you. Try to go for walks and listen. Try to take risks. And what happened with my students is that they began to take a risk every day, writing to get on the page. And they would say, I'm interested in Italy. Oh, that's ridiculous. And then the pages would say again, you can learn Italian. And they would think, I'm too old to learn Italian. And then they'd say, just try it. And people would say, oh, maybe I can do it. And this is what I find is so miraculous about teaching, is that I had a director in my class who was blocked, and she started directing. And I thought, this is pretty powerful. And I had a painter in my class who started painting again. And I began to realize that when we hooked ourselves up to the higher power, to the creative force that through the flower drives the green fuse of energy, when we try to connect to a divine source, our creativity is unlimited. Our creativity is expansive. Our creativity is encouraged. I began to witness miracles.
That was author Julia Cameron discussing the power of morning pages as well as your artist walks. So definitely check that book out. I really love it. I stand by it, and I try to do the activity, the whole book, once a year. Next up, we have Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. You're going to hear her talk about just the power of unlocking your creativity. A bonus is that once you listen to the book, I highly recommend getting it on Audible because Liz Gilbert, she narrates it. Also listen to her 2-season podcast, which you can find online. It's called Magic Lessons, and that's where she helps people through the book unlock their creativity. All right, let's take a listen to Liz Gilbert and Big Magic.
You know what it is? It's a response to years of being out in public, talking to people who tell me about the projects they want to be making and are not making, the things they want to be doing and are not doing. And oftentimes when I'm in public, I meet people who are making and doing really cool things and they want to tell me about it. But mostly it's people who aren't. And when they come to me with their problems about creativity or their struggles with creativity, because they know I love to talk about creativity, I find that they always have some sort of very rational, reasonable, kind of material, real world reason why they're not doing it, that they can lay out as an explanation. But when you start to scratch away at that, what's underneath it is always and only fear.
Yes.
Always and only fear. I don't care what the excuses or the rationalization or the justification for why they're not doing the thing that's calling to them. Yeah. At the bottom of it, they're afraid. They're afraid they don't have the talent. They're afraid they don't have the right. They're afraid it's already been done better. They're afraid they'll be rejected or insulted or criticized or worse, ignored. They're afraid there's no point. There's afraid, they just have these like tumbling piles of fear. And I see it so much and I hear the same questions again and again that I finally just thought, well, let's officially talk about this.
Yes.
Let's actually really break this down and try to figure out how people can live more creative lives without being so scared.
Next up, we have The Power of Purpose by Les Brown. This book is kind of like my secret weapon. I listen to it maybe once a quarter. You can find all the chapters on YouTube or you can buy it on Audible. I just love this book. What I'm going to do right now is play one of my favorite clips from the book. I'm talking about being courageous and let you listen.
In what you've done with your life thus far, is it giving you what you want? Is it giving you what you want? When you look toward the future, when you look at all that's going on out here, is there some place within yourself you say, hey, I know I need to be out there in that arena. I know I can do more than what I've been doing. I know there's some great music that I have within me that I haven't brought out here yet. Is that something that you begin to look at within yourself? See, I say if you look at your life, and if you're not getting what you want, you owe it to yourself to do something differently. If you're on a job, 85%, they say, of Americans go to jobs that they're unhappy. If you're doing something 8 hours a day that you don't like, it's not giving you what you want, it's not giving you a strong feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment, you're miserable, you hate to go there, you're depressed just thinking about it, you sing the Thank God It's Friday song every week. If that's what it is, you owe it to yourself to start strategically working to change directions. See, but you know what most people will do? Most people will resist change. Most people will fight change as if change would be worse than what they're experiencing. See, they know this. They're familiar with this. Most people will not challenge the unknown. They won't just step out there. See, there's certain things that's got to be in place. They got to see it all together. And life isn't like that. That's not how you grow. So as you look at your life, you're saying, I'm not getting what I want. As you begin to look toward the future, begin to know that whatever it takes for you to create that, you've got that in you. You've got that. You've got genius in you. You've got goodness in you. You've got creativeness in you. If you decide to take the initiative to change the current quality of your life, I say to you that you will find that the universe is on your side, that life is on your side. Now, will it be turbulent? Yes. Will it be easy? No, no. Will you have some opposition? Yes. Will I make a lot of mistakes? Yes. Will I get hurt? Yes. Yes. See, a lot of people won't try anything different in life because they don't want to get hurt. Let me tell you something. It's too much pain to duck. pain is everywhere. You can hide under here. It will come where you are. It's everywhere. Viktor Frankl calls it unavoidable suffering. You can't duck it. But most people spend their life not wanting to deal with the pain of rejection, the pain of defeat, the pain of being disappointed, the pain of losing, the pain of failure, the pain of being criticized, the pain of not being liked, the pain. That's called life.
That clip is one of my favorites. I'll put a link to that specific clip in the show notes, but definitely check that book out. I highly advise getting it on Audible and listening to him talk. It's amazing. Next up, we have The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield. I'm going to play a clip where he talks about getting through the resistance, which is just an amazing perspective for all people, including creatives. So let's take a listen.
The demon, in this case, the dragon that we have to slay, is internally based. It's internal self-sabotage, what I call resistance with a capital R. And what has worked, the question then becomes, well, how do you overcome it? Once you identify the voices that you hear in your head that are really not you, they're really this negative force that's out there that's resisting you. As an example, if you ever try to meditate and you try to quiet your mind, you find just these crazy things go through your head one after the other. And if you identify with them and you say, that's me, then you're in trouble. But if you recognize them as just sort of alien, visitations, you can just let them pass through and keep working. So, okay, how do you overcome resistance? For me, the policy that I use, or the phrase that I use, is turning pro, which is a kind of a different attitude from being an amateur to being a professional. Now, an amateur hits a sticking point, like if you're going to play basketball and your ankle hurts, you'll just retire to the bench and say, hey, it hurts. But a pro, like Kobe Bryant or somebody like that, learns to play hurt. And a pro learns to do all the things that we do on our regular jobs, but apply it to our love, the love of our life, our work. A pro shows up every morning no matter what. A pro stays on the job all through the day. A pro doesn't over-identify with the work so that if there's a failure, it knocks him out of the batter's box. A pro doesn't take failure personally or success personally. A pro is patient. A pro endures adversity. A pro plays hurt. All of this kind of attitude of a professional helps you attain that sort of lunch pail, hard hat, attitude that's not precious, not a prima donna, not a diva, but a hard-working, hit 'em every day, go for it, infantry attack mode. And that, for me, is how you get something done from A to Z.
The next book is The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. This is a clip where he explains the challenges with assumptions, and he was on Oprah's show on OWN. So let's listen to Oprah and Don talk about this, The 4 Agreements.
Don't make assumptions. Whoa, boy. We make all sorts of assumptions because we don't have the courage to ask questions. We make the assumption that everybody sees life the way we do. Oh my goodness, how many times have I been in conversations with people and I say, that's your point of view. You're assuming that everybody thinks like you.
Yes.
That's one of the biggest ones, isn't it?
Yes, and that really comes from knowledge.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. When we was born, we have no knowledge. Then society captures our attention, and it teaches the language we speak, the religion that we follow, etc., etc. Then once that we have knowledge, something extraordinary happened when we are maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. And what happened is that knowledge starts speaking in our head with a voice that no one can hear but us. And that voice of knowledge is really made by assumptions. It's assuming almost everything. Then when I say don't make assumptions, it's just a way to try to control the best we can all those thoughts. If we go deeper, like we said a little before, if we find a place in between thoughts, that inner silence, then we will see that we really can control also thoughts, and we can create that silence inside of us.
You say on page 64, all the sadness and drama you have lived in your life was rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. Everything revolves around either one or two of those, right?
Yes.
Taking it personally or assuming somebody is thinking the way that you do. I think women make this mistake a lot in relationships, all kinds of relationships, particularly with their spouses and boyfriends and all that, is that you think that person should know how you feel or what you're thinking. You think that person should know because they love you, they care about you, they know. Isn't that a huge one that people make all the time?
Yes, it's happened all the time, all around the world. And we cannot read minds, really.
So not making assumptions.
Next up, we have Mindset by Carol Dweck. She's talking about having a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. I love this book. Some of the information and science that is involved and shared in the book is phenomenal. I highly encourage you reading this one too. Here she's going to explain in about a 3-minute clip just different thoughts on mindset and growth compared to fix. Let's take a listen.
The Silicon Valley founders are not afraid to fail. That is a key characteristic of the growth mindset. In fact, they say that when they fail, they're learning to succeed. They're gaining the experience that they need for their ultimate success. In a fixed mindset, failure means you're not a genius. Failure means there's something wrong with you. It's humiliating. It's to be swept aside as soon as possible. That attitude really curtails your success in the long run. How can people change from a fixed to a growth mindset? In my book, incidentally called Mindset, I have a chapter on how people can take those first steps toward change. But I also have a chart that juxtaposes the different characteristics of the two mindsets. And I suggest that people Xerox the chart, blow it up, and paste it on their mirror, because in the fixed mindset, it's about looking smart, always documenting that you've got the goods. But in the growth mindset, it's about capitalizing on what you have, growing it, and learning. Mistakes mean, in the fixed mindset, you don't have it, and you've got to cover them up. But mistakes in a growth mindset, they're just vehicles for learning. Effort in a fixed mindset means, well, you must not be a genius if you really have to sweat. But in the growth mindset, it is the way to develop your abilities and reach success. In a fixed mindset, other people's successes are undermining. But in a growth mindset, they're inspiring, and they're people you can learn from. So step by step by step, people need to keep these in front of them and catch themselves when they're falling into that limiting fixed mindset. Some people have a fixed mindset. They think their qualities, their intelligence, are carved in stone. You have a certain amount, and that's that. And these people worry about how much they have. They need to be right, they need to be brilliant, and they're always on that groove. Other people have what I call a growth mindset. They believe their basic qualities can be cultivated, developed throughout their lives, and they're in it for the growth, the learning, the adventure, not just to look smart.
The next book, final book for this episode, is Grit by Angela Duckworth. She talks about how many, many times talent will not win out if someone with lesser talent works harder and sticks with it and just has an enormous amount of grit. Here's an interview she did on TV, and let's hear what she had to say.
So my poor children have heard the word grit after your book 1,000 times, and I apologize.
I'm sorry.
What have you learned since writing it between now and the paperback about grit?
The first thing I should say is that I still believe that this combination of passion and perseverance is a common denominator of excellence. It doesn't matter whether you're trying to become a world-class athlete or a broadcast journalist or anything else. So that hasn't changed. But one thing that I have learned since writing the book is just the importance of passion and the challenge that so many people have in figuring out something they love is in some ways more difficult than the perseverance half of grit.
Right. So the grit has to be in the service of something you are passionate about. It's not just grinding it away no matter what. It's grinding it away on something that you have a real value connection with.
I think that's my, major quip with tiger parenting, right? I mean, you cannot chain your kid to a piano bench and expect them
I'll cross that off the list.
Yeah, no chaining to piano benches in case that was, something you were considering. But I do see parents making this mistake all the time. They think oh, my kids need to learn a work ethic, so I will sign them up for this really hard sport. But if the kid doesn't choose that activity, I feel like you have missed the first thing that you need to do as a parent.
So in the debate of nature versus nurture, where does grit fit in? Because obviously you want to be inspired. You want to have people guiding you in the right direction. Some people require a bit more driving than others.
I absolutely agree. And one thing I should say about grit is that, like anything else about us, how shy we are, how tall we grow, there is a component of grit which is genetic. In other words, your DNA, they do influence how gritty you'll be. But the part that I'm most interested in is the non-DNA part. Your coaches, how your parents raise you, the role models that you have in life. These environmental experiences all tremendously influence your grit.
So can parents teach grit? You said that you shouldn't chain a kid, John, sorry, you can't do that, to something that they don't want to do, violin lessons or piano. But don't people discover grit through the perseverance of something that they may not have been familiar with and then become familiar with?
So I think parents play an enormously important role, and they do a few things. The first thing is that a parent is the child's first role model. So if you love what you do and your kids see you wake up early, go at it, have bad days, come home, maybe even cry a little, get back up again, I mean, that's probably the most important thing that parents do, provide a model of what it is to love what you do and to work really hard at it. But the other thing I think parents, especially of kids who are, a little older than the preschool years, now these are kids are getting into activities, into sports, dance, whatever it is. I think that if a parent can choose a coach or a teacher who really helps kids become their best and actually, get that feedback that no, today I know you didn't give me what I know you can do. I think that's another thing parents can do.
Well, let me ask you about teachers, which is that grit is now being graded in some schools. How does that work, and how do teachers who have different relationship with kids instill those traits of grit?
I am 100% against grading kids on grit. For one thing, Angela Duckworth does not have a great measure of grit that is, like a thermometer. You can say it's accurate, it's precise, it's unfakeable. So that's one reason. But the other thing is that I don't believe that character, grit, curiosity, empathy, compassion, all the things that we want our children to grow up to be, I don't think that grading them and providing, pluses and minuses, carrots and sticks, I don't think that's the way to develop character.
And yet when these kids graduate and apply for their first jobs and go on these first interviews, should they be selling their grit?
I think that if you are in your first interview, you can proudly point to your accomplishments. You can say, here's where I spent, 3-4 hours a day, by the time I was a senior in high school, working on this thing to get better. As an employer, I would love to hear that. And that's something I think, we can actually honestly say, yeah, let's have young people grow up to be hardworking people who can point to accomplishments that they earned.
All right, that does it for my first list of the 7 books you must read. I think I'll come back in a few weeks and do a 7 under-the-radar books you have to read because I have so many more to share. But thanks again for listening. We'll see you again next week. We'll have a couple interviews for us coming up, so I appreciate it. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on and share this podcast with anyone who you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon for our next episode.